Hello, everybody. Welcome to Thrive once again, where I believe you were not created to survive, but to thrive. And if you change yourself, you can change your world. Welcome to another episode of Thrive. Today, I'm really excited. I have one of my friends, my brothers, on the episode. He's also one of our executive pastors at our church here in Miami called Calvary. And it's an honor and a privilege to have with us Adam Montes. Adam, thank you for being on the podcast.
No, it's an honor. It's an honor to be here.
You were on one of the other episodes
Yep.
when it was me, you, Phil, and John. And but I've been meaning to do this one-on-one with you. And so I'm glad that you're here. And we've been now serving together for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Doing ministry together for a long, long time. And I think there's a lot of people that maybe don't know your story. They may see you on a Sunday. They may see you on our YouTube channel, but don't know you. And I think you also have, some insight on leadership and some of the ways that your life turned around. I think you became a very disciplined person after having gone through all of that. And so today, let's take a little bit of time just to talk a little bit about your story, talk a little bit about where you've been and where you're at. Obviously, apart from being a father now, apart from being a full-time dad, how's that journey going?
It's great.
Isn't it the best?
It is the best. It is, I would say it's a labor of love, seriously, because I feel like there's so many different sides of it, because as a father, I want to protect. As a father, I want to provide. But as a father, I also want to be present.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's some days in the process of providing, I'm not present. And then if I'm not present, I can't protect. So there's layers to it, but man, it's great.
I think it was Pastor Stephen Furtick. I think that I heard say this. You're not always going to get an A across all the time.
Yeah.
Like sometimes we're like, we want to be there for our kids. I feel you. Mm-hmm. We're dealing with the same thing. Like, I want to be there every week. I wish I could get home at 3 p.m. every day and spend the entire afternoon and evening. But some other days we got to work late. Yeah. And so we won't get home till like 6 or 7, getting ready just to put them to bed. But if you don't give yourself grace and just understand that's life, the rhythms of life, hey, 1 week I may have to work late. The next week I'll probably be home early every day. It depends, especially in what we do in our ministry. But it is kind of difficult to try to navigate that. Yeah. But giving yourself some grace. So yeah, we're all going through those challenges right now.
Yeah, but it's great. Zach, he just today wraps up his first week of school, and amazing. That is. It's wild that I've already found the schedule to drop him off, pick him up, and then pretty soon Brooklyn will be there too. So
you
can't wait.
Became a father of 2 really quick.
Back to back, they are a year and 3 weeks apart.
Zach was like a week old, and you guys got pregnant.
The doctor said 4 to 6.
Shout out to Brooke. Your wife is phenomenal.
Yeah, she was pregnant for 2 years in a row during the summer.
That is wild. You guys are done, you told me.
Oh yeah, we're done. We're done.
Unless a miracle happens. But done too.
Yes, exactly.
When done, awesome. Zach and Brooklyn and your wife, Brooke, is awesome. Amanda, but we all call her Brooke. So you got Brooke and baby Brooke now. Yep. Can you share the story really quick? Why is your wife named Brooke?
Yes, absolutely. So my wife, her government name is Amanda. And she was born in New York. Her family, or her and her mother, they moved to Florida from Brooklyn. And when she first came to Florida, she had that thick New York accent, like, hey, let me walk my dog, let me drink some coffee. You know what I mean? Wore New York Yankees fitted all the time. And pray for her. But that was her nickname. Her nickname was just Brooklyn throughout all of high school. But when I met her our senior year of high school, fell in love with her.
What high school?
American Senior High.
Okay. Shout out American.
Met her in childcare class. Look at us. It's prophetic.
Yes. It was meant to be.
And immediately fell in love with her. Said, hey, I'm going to marry you. We're going to have kids. The whole thing.
You told her that whole thing?
When I was 17, turning 18 years old.
Wow.
I told her that. And here we are now.
Wow.
And, but yeah, so her nickname is Brooklyn. And as she got older, she just shortened it to Brooke. And then everyone met her in church as Brooke. But since high school, I've always refused to call her Brooklyn or Brooke. I say, no, your name's Amanda.
Your name's Amanda.
Everybody else can call you that.
But what's the story? You told her you were from New York as well.
Oh, yeah. I lied to my wife for the first 2 years.
Wait, it was 2 years?
It took 2 years for me to tell the truth.
2 years she thought you were actually from New York as well.
Yeah, I told her I was from Queens. So because I knew Queens. I used to go there. When I was younger. That my uncle, he owns a couple of properties in Queens. So during the summer.
Oh, okay, so it's not like you hadn't even been there.
No. I did it pretty good.
So you're not from Queens, but you've been to Queens a lot.
Yes, and then
She's from Queens.
Yeah. So after 2 years, when at that point you're emotionally invested,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
this
that's
isn't
it.
gonna make it or break it.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I wasn't born in Queens. I was actually born in Hialeah Hospital. So I had to show her my birth certificate. She didn't believe me.
That's awesome. Is she still mad about it?
No, she wasn't even mad then. She was like, who cares? Because people in Brooklyn don't like people in Queens. I'm like, oh, there you go.
Well, there you go. Oh, that is, I love that story. Every time you share it, it's phenomenal. But love you and your wife very, very much. And so now executive role at Calvary, you, Phil, and Louis Collazo helped me and Nana a ton. How's that been? It's been challenging?
I mean, everything in life has its challenges. This is, it's challenging not because of the work in and of itself, but at least for me, I would say like I care. So, and I'm the type of person where I don't enjoy being a part of things that are lackluster.
Yeah.
Like it has to be great. I've learned to give myself grace in that and not just become a crazy perfectionist, but really just like, let's do things right.
Were you a perfectionist?
To a degree, like it's like everything had to be done my way, especially, I moved out of my parents' house very young. So I got used to being on my own.
Moved out at like 8?
Like at 8 years old.
No, how old were you when you moved out?
I was about like 19, 20, somewhere
Still
around there.
Early, yeah, absolutely.
And moved out of my mom's house. And, so I just got so used to doing things
Your
my
way.
way. Yeah. And even when I was still living with my mom, still I had my own room, the whole
So
thing.
how's that been now in a church like ours? You've been on staff now, what, 4 years?
5.
Yeah, 5. How's it been like working with other people? And before that, either way, you worked in corporate America, but I think that was still more where you can do what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
Now in this executive role, you help oversee people. You help our whole operations side. Has that been challenging to be like, okay, not everything's going to be my way?
Yeah, well, that was the hard part when I first got on staff. Was that because I have a background in the marketplace, everything's black and white. Meaning, hey, if you didn't do your part, then all right, now we know clearly these are the consequences of it. So that worked perfect for me.
Yeah.
But being in church now, coming at it from more of a ministerial perspective, it was challenging because it's like, this person's not doing their job or this person's not doing their part. Like, how am I supposed to react here?
Yeah.
And just being more graceful to others because I hold myself to a high standard. One of the challenges I've always had was not projecting it to others.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's easy to do that. Because I know I would do it. It doesn't mean they would.
Yeah.
And so that was a challenging part.
Yeah, and I think you've brought in, and we've talked about this. I think you've brought in a really good standard where everybody now knows. Okay, yeah, doesn't mean just because we serve in church doesn't mean you got to do half a job. Doesn't mean you got to be lazy. And so I think you when you hold people to that standard, it has made people like, okay, let's go. But yeah, we are pastors too. So, okay, before I fire you or before we have to have tough conversations, how can I help you?
Yeah.
And so it is absolutely different. But you are very technical. You're very analytical. You help me a ton when it comes to charts, numbers, analytics. You are a genius and a brain when it comes to that. I think pictures, I think charts, I think all that, I just can't actually do it. And so you've been such a help. I would tell Adam, like, hey, where are we at here? Can you put through some charts? And I feel like you do it in 5 minutes. That's why when you oversee operations, it's such a big help for us. Did you ever think you would be in a position like this?
Never.
In a church?
No, never in a church.
You grew up in church.
So my family, we attended a church. We used to go to this Spanish Pentecostal, but like Pentecostal
In Miami?
In I think it's like downtown Opelika, like that weird spot in between area. And yeah, but it was a Spanish church. And, although I looked the part, I'm learning Spanish now. And,
a little bit.
Yeah, un poquito. And,
but you're Puerto Rican.
Which means I'm American.
Yeah.
So, in Puerto Rico,
Did you not grow up talking Spanish in your house?
I mean, my parents did, but I would say I was very ignorant. Cool. Meaning, like, my grandmother would say something to me in Spanish, and I would say "No hablo español," and I would get smacked in the face for it. And
so you just wanted to stick to English.
Yeah, I was just like, English, please.
But went to a Spanish church.
So I didn't really understand. So like I knew we were raised to know of a God. I just didn't know him. So for me, it's like I went there because my parents were there all the time. I went there because my mom would sing on the worship team, or I went there because, when my dad got sick, that's just, okay, we're going to go to church. Yeah. And so went to church, but not really. Like, was physically there, but wasn't there. Yeah. Was kind of the...
I think a good look at somebody who can be a good leader is a person who leads themselves first. And I think you live that out well. I think you do hold yourself to a high standard. Anybody who knows you do run 100 miles an hour. You do have a high standard of excellence, but I think you try to demand of yourself first than you do with everybody else. Do you think it was life and what happened in your life that made you that way, or have you think you've always been that way, or what do you think?
So the more I talk to my good friend Ernie, which is my therapist.
Shout out to Ernie.
Shout out to Ernie.
Our therapist. He's helped us out a ton.
The greatest.
And by the way, I'm gonna have him on the program, and so that'll be fun.
Man,
he doesn't know it yet, but I'm gonna reach out to him.
I want to physically hug him. I've only seen him through Zoom.
He's the best.
So one of the things that we've been working on, and really for me, the more that I think about it, I think there's like two things that kind of led to shape, like two significant things that kind of led to me being shaped as far as the high standard and all of that. One of them being, before my dad passed away, I remember he used to always say, be the hardest working person in any room. Like, don't let anybody outwork you. So that's kind of like my toxic trait.
That was ingrained?
That was seared into my brain. So I call it my toxic trait because I'll be the type of person where it's like everyone else will be tired. And I'm like, hey, let's keep it going. It'll be 2 a.m. in the morning. Like Michael, who's behind the cameras, he knows very well. Like I would, hey, let's keep it going until it's done. Yeah. And then the other thing.
Again, like you said, it can be a good thing.
Yes.
It can also be a bad thing.
Precisely. And because it doesn't create margin for anyone else.
Yeah.
And the other thing would be just having to grow up very young, meaning, I got my first job when I was 13 years old.
Yeah.
I would take care of myself. My mom, I lived in my mom's house, but I mean, my phone bill I'd pay when I was a teenager. I would help when it came to making sure utilities were on. As a teenager, like things like that.
You had to grow up. You had to be responsible.
Yeah, I had to become a 30-year-old when I was 13.
I think you just mentioned it a few moments ago. Your dad became sick.
Yeah,
is that what he got sick and then ended up passing away? Do you mind talk about that? What happened there with your father? Were you close to him?
Yeah, sure. So, well, I'm the youngest. I'm the youngest of 4 siblings. So that I have my oldest sister, Crystal, who is my best friend in the world. She was the best man at my wedding. Yeah. I have my brother. I have my sister, Jackie, and then there's me. So I'm the youngest. And by about 8 years old, when I was 8, out of nowhere, my dad just got really sick, and he was diagnosed with. By the time he passed away, he was diagnosed with colon cancer. He was diagnosed with, he had multiple heart attacks, strokes within a 5-year span. Wow. He passed away when I was 13 years old. So that hit our family tough. Like I grew up, close to my dad for the most part. I always felt some type of way because he had a more strong, like he had a stronger relationship with my brother. Because my brother was his junior, first boy, the whole thing. And I was a kid growing up that I would get sick often. Going outside, if they mowed the grass, I would get a nosebleed. Wow. So it's like, I wouldn't.
Does that still happen?
No, not anymore. I just get really itchy. Allergies. Yeah. So things like that. And, so yeah, to answer the question, like it impacted our family pretty tough because my dad was a provider. This guy, he was a locksmith, would work from sunrise to beyond sundown. And
did you grow up with a good relationship with him?
Oh yeah, my dad was the best. Like we would hang out, and I love my dad. Still miss my dad to this day. It's been.
How old were you when he passed?
I was 13. I had just turned 13, wow. So it's been at this point 19 years. How did that
affect you personally?
I mean, it. I didn't feel the effects of it until later. I guess I didn't know how to process my emotions at that time. I think everything kind of poured out a few years later when my grandfather passed away, which was technically his stepdad, but that's my grandfather. It impacted me. It sucked. I just found a way to just compartmentalize it and just move forward. But when I suffered that other significant loss, it's like that's it. It was downhill from there. Try to find every other way to cope, whether it was drinking or got introduced to drugs young. just doing all types of mischief. So things like that, it impacted me in a way where it's like, I kind of just lost a desire to, it's weird because at that point I lost a desire to try to achieve anything or try to accomplish anything because I was just so fixated on just death, being surrounded by it. But yeah, it sucked. It sucked. And, you know, you meet people and you hear these stories, or you look out and you see like your peers or other family members, and they get to hang out with all their family. They get to hang out with their dad, and you hear all these beautiful stories of them making memories. And I'm just like, yeah, I got to go to work after school.
Yeah, for sure. What kind of father was he with you guys?
Man, my dad was the best. He was, and of course everyone says that about their parent. My dad was the absolute best. He was super funny. He was serious when he needed to be serious. He was hilarious when he needed, when just every other moment. He was so kind-hearted. Would see people on the street, strangers. We're talking people like on the corners that are like holding up, hey, I got oranges for sale, and he would lower down the window and like say something kind to them. And like,
you remember that?
Oh, that's absolutely, wild. Absolutely. He would see like an elderly lady, and he was like, "Hey, you're beautiful," and like wow. just randomly, wow. Like I'm like, I look at that now, and if I were to see that, I'm like, this person is a creep. but he would do stuff like that. The other children in our neighborhood, like the other families growing up, he would on Fridays he would get us all together and would go to like Wendy's and get us all Frosties and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like. He was just a generous man. He was so kind-hearted, and just fun to be around. He was a cool hang. Just, you know, mind you, I speak to like my uncle who got to experience him as an adult, and everyone's like, man, your dad was the best man in the room, in every room.
Wow. Did you have to walk through him being sick? Like, were you there?
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember, like, was it a long thing? Did you have to like help him out those last months, years?
I mean, we did have to help a lot. Going through it all, like having to spend sometimes he would spend 2 weeks, a couple of weeks in the hospital. So getting out of school, mom picks you up. Hey, we gotta go, and he would go to like Jackson South. We were in Miami Gardens, yeah. So it's not that far, but it's far. But we would have to go all the way. Jackson North. I'm sorry. So basically, as soon as you get out of school, go and spend some time with him in the hospital and see him on like a ventilator. And like I would see my hero, this strong man. My dad was a heavy dude, but I would see this strong man just be bedridden. Still with a sense of humor though, but wow. Just be bedridden. So I would see that for the next 5 years. I think we're really
5 years.
Yeah, for 5 years straight. It was just, you know, it was always like, when is Ivan, my dad, like when is he gonna be in the hospital, is what everybody would ask. But I would say that the worst of it was right before he passed away, where Christmas Eve in 2004, he had a heart attack in the middle of our Christmas party, but nobody knew about it. That's the crazy thing, is that we have a house full of everyone, and this was one of the first times that we were able to spend that holiday with my sister Jackie. So my sister Jackie, we have the same dad, different moms, but that was the first time that all of us were together, and so that was a big deal. And he has a heart attack in the middle of the party and waits for everyone to leave, and we find out after all this, but waited for everyone to leave. My mom rushed him to the hospital, and he was in that hospital from Christmas all the way until January 29th. So a month and some change in the hospital. When he got out, at that point, he was, you know, on an oxygen tank all the time. We had a nurse come to take care of him. We would have to help with taking care of him as far as just handling little things, which, you know, for me, the hardest story is the day that he passed away for me, where, again, I knew we had to help. I knew we had to assist him in certain things. And I remember one day, the day he passed away, earlier in the day, he screams out my name, like, for me to help him. And legit, it was to get a remote for him that he couldn't get up, just to get a remote so that he can be in bed and watch TV. And I remember ignoring him from my bedroom. And I was mad at him, because it's like, man, why are you doing this to our family? And why like why are you asking me for in my mind, the dumbest thing, not knowing that legit, not even 8 hours later he would die. So that I've had to learn to heal. I've had to like forgive myself for that. And obviously learn from that, where it's like, hey, if you get the call to help, just answer it.
Yeah.
Because you never know.
Yeah. Wow. What a lesson to learn, right?
Yeah.
All of us, I think, at any given moment could ask or say, why is this happening? Or why is this person calling me? And you don't know what the last moment is that you're going to have with somebody. I can't imagine at 13 trying to even navigate that. Mm-hmm. At 13 trying to, like, my dad called me and I ignored him, you know? But again, it's a 13-year-old. And so I'm glad that you've walked through a moment of self-forgiveness and grace. But I'm sure that's carried on a little bit, and you've had to get to a point to learn that now through therapy. I know your life then took a pretty dark turn at some point. Mm-hmm. People that see you now, what you do at our church, whether you're hosting, teaching, whether you're doing organizational stuff, whether you're leading some team meetings and every operational stuff that you do behind the scenes, have no idea maybe some of the darkest moments. This is a podcast about leadership, life and lifestyles. Your lifestyle was a mess. I would say you had no type of leadership really in any kind of sense. You get a job opportunity to go to North Carolina. And I think those North Carolina, from everything you've told me over the years, that's like some of the darkest moments of your life. Yeah,
absolutely. So, I mean, mind you, I've always, even before Christ, I've always been fixated on like self-improvement. Yeah. Because I just didn't see myself as someone not worth anything. I was like, man, how can I just get better? Obviously from a secular standpoint, you know, I loved working out. That was like my outlet at one point. Just things like that. But yeah, so I ended up working for a company that had an office here in Miramar. Great company to work for. And their headquarters in North South Carolina. They offered me a relocation package. And a few people also who worked in the Miramar office are like, hey, look, we want to offer you to work here. Just you're going to have to move. At that point in life, my downward spiral was already it was already there, you know, just drinking all the time, abusing drugs. Mind you, I'm with my wife at this point. But her not knowing that when I took her home or whenever she wasn't around, I was doing drugs.
You guys were going out, boyfriend and girlfriend. You would drop her off at home, and then you would go and do whatever you had to do. Yeah.
Drop her off at home and then go to Club Space and be there till 4 a.m. Like stuff like that. You know what I mean? Or be at my apartment and just do all types of foolishness. Yeah. And every day drinking to the point where it's like I'm not just trying to get drunk. I'm trying to make it so I pass out or I don't wake up the next day. So
literally, you didn't care.
I didn't care for anything, or the only person legit I cared about was my girlfriend. And
what led you to that point of not caring?
I think it was just that feeling of low self-worth, and you know, you go through life and you feel that you never fit in anywhere. So like there's something wrong with you. You know, your dad passes away, your grandfather passes away, a best friend no longer speaks to you, your uncle, or my uncle, who was my best friend, was a brother to me. He's my uncle, but it's my brother. We're only a couple years separated. Shout out to my grandfather. And like him no longer speaking to us, was like, man, is there something wrong with me that I had that abandonment feeling where it's like, man, people just leave me. And so because of that, it's like, what's the point?
What's the point of life?
But yet at the same time, still wanting to get better. It was a weird dynamic. And so they offered me the relocation package. Not caring at that point, me and Amanda had broken up. Like right before they offered it, we broke up.
She found out you were from Queens. You guys break up.
Exactly. She said, from Queens? Oh, no. Yeah. And
so you move.
So I moved. Yeah, that was me. That was my way to escape. So I left and I lived there for a year. And well, being alone, I did a lot of self-reflection, and a lot of it was very negative. Meaning,
why did it get darker? Was it just being away from everybody?
I think part of it is that, and I think you know, I always had battled with just the depressive thoughts and really suicidal thoughts. Just like, man, like what's the point? Let me just end this. Like drinking to the point where I wanted to die. Like
so that had already been happening for some years.
Yeah, that had been going on for quite some time. It's just when I was there.
Can you share that? Because maybe some people listening today have similar thoughts and can relate to you. what were some of the depressive thoughts? Like where would they come from? You think? What were you dealing with? What were some of the things that you were navigating through?
I mean, it was so random. It would come in waves, meaning it could be I was in a setting just like this where we will be talking and we're having a great time, we're laughing, and then immediately it's like, what are you laughing for? Like those thoughts will come in like, what are you laughing for? Like you're not worth anything, and a lot more colorful language would come in, and
all in your head while you're in a public setting.
Smiling, having a good time, probably a drink in my hand, and it's like, yeah, you should probably drink some more and then like crash on the way going home. Like those are thoughts that would come in my mind, you know? So yeah, it was tough. And, you know, just the idea of just like, all right, you gotta, what's the point? I felt like the best way I could describe it is I felt like I was constantly in a glass box. Like think of like a phone booth, but it was all surrounded by glass, and it just kept on getting tighter and tighter and tighter to the point where I just wanted to escape that. So every time I wanted to escape, I was like, okay, how can I think of a new way to end my own life? How can I think of a new way to just you know, whether it's driving into something, whether it's driving off the highway, whether it's drinking myself to death. I didn't have the courage to do any cutting, so I didn't do any of that. I think I
remember you telling me that there was a night where you're driving and you're like, I'm just going to end it here and I'm going to drive off the highway.
Oh, that was literally, how many days are in a year? 365. That was 365 days straight when I lived in, well, maybe a little less, from when I lived in North Carolina.
Every night you were just like, I'm done.
Every day I would get on that, because how you travel is through different highways there, and every day I'm like, I'll just drive off this highway right now, because you're on on a hill or a mountain.
You just didn't want to live anymore.
Yeah, I had no desire for it, and you know, you have those moments of like joy is what I would deal with. I have those moments of joy, and then eventually just thoughts come right back in. So yeah, when I was there, I guess because I didn't have anybody with me.
Yeah, I was gonna talk about that. You were isolated, basically. Yeah, you were living by yourself in North Carolina. I mean, you had a roommate, coworkers, but really, you by yourself just trying to navigate these thoughts.
No, I mean, my roommate was somebody who also moved from Miami. He was one of my best friends.
Got it.
And and even that didn't really help. And it's a pretty significant event happened I was there from August to August, in about May, and I went off the grid. Like no one heard from me at all. Like no one heard from me, saw me, nothing. You wouldn't even know. Like legit, people thought I was dead.
Some people, in my years of like trying to like talk to people and understand, I feel like some people do that as a cry for attention. Some other people really, they don't care. Yeah. They just don't care. Did you not care? Or did you want somebody to help you, but you didn't know how to express it? So was it a cry for attention, or you like, no, I don't really care?
That specifically, I didn't care. At that point, I didn't care, and it's crazy because like we were out somewhere late at night, and someone else was recording a Snapchat, and in the Snapchat in the background, you hear me saying, "Hey, I don't want to live anymore." Like wow. that was, and I remember I had Amanda, who was my ex-girlfriend at that point, blowing up my phone. Hey, what's going on? I saw this video. I heard you. I know your voice. My sister, my mom. Some other friends, everyone. And then at that point, I'm like, I don't care. I don't want your help. I don't want nothing. And I went off the grid for a while.
Very dark place.
It was bad. It was rough.
Was it just, not self-harm of like just cutting yourself, but you were self-harming and drinking?
Yeah, absolutely. And then other drugs that literally I wouldn't do, like, mind you, I don't think there's any normal amount to do of drugs. Yeah. But I would do more than that just because it's like, all right, what's it going to take? Is it going to take X amount of pills? Is it going to take X amount of this, that? And it got so bad, so much to the point where my roommate, who is not a Christian, who's not raised in a church, who was far from God, was like, bro, you need help. I need to take you to a church.
Were you doing all type of drugs?
Yeah.
How would that make you feel?
You know, you have that moment, depending on the drug, where you feel good. It's like, okay, cool. This is things are looking great. And then there's the down. Once you have a downer, it made everything more amplified. Yeah. So, you know, at one point I would do cocaine, and it would get me up rocking, and then immediately it made me like bipolar, where I'd go from a high of a high to a low of a low, and then it just got worse. And
I think we were both talking about the interview that we just saw, the Theo Vaughn interview.
Okay, yep.
With President Trump. Yeah. And he's talking about doing cocaine, and he said it'll keep him up all night.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That was your experience too. But then what do? You have to work the next day.
I would show up to work with sunglasses and grinding my teeth. Like
Wow.
it was rough. It was rough. Yeah. And still fully functional, which is crazy to think about. Like I would show up to work, and then during the workday, go to my car, I'd drink, like things like that. But being fully functional, like I didn't skip a beat, at least in my mind. And that for me was a scary place, as far as I would justify the need for these things. And that's when I knew it was a problem.
In that interview, we were talking about that interview. That interview, I think he's in a recovery program, and I think he said he hasn't done it in 8 years. Something like that. Do you still struggle with that or no?
No. I have no desire anymore of anything. It's funny that the struggle ended at a worship and prayer night we did a couple years ago.
Wow.
And for drugs, that's been gone. It was for alcohol. That still had I would be in church serving. I'd do offering on a Sunday, and I'd go home, and on my way going home, I would stop by 7-Eleven, grab a 6-pack, drink it in the car, and then get back and then get into my apartment. Like,
Drink all 6.
brother, Red Stripe. That was my thing. There's not an endorsement.
So what happened at a worship and prayer night?
I remember it was during our 21 days of prayer and fasting. It was like week number 2 in 2018. And I had already made the commitment, like, while we do prayer and fasting, I won't drink, which that was tough. It was tough at first. The first 2 years I did it. And in 2018 comes like, okay, I can do it.
So you were drinking, serving in church, all that. But you were drinking more than normal, meaning more than if somebody wants to drink a glass of wine or beer or whatever, but you were drinking more than normal.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be an open door to like go back to drugs?
No. Thankfully, I made that decision, and I wanted to be in control of my body.
So you're like, okay, I'll drink a little bit more than I should, but I won't go back to drugs.
Yeah. So I nothing had to bind on me more than alcohol.
Got it.
And then I remember Pastor Diana comes up and she's like, hey, I'm praying for people who need healing. And then she goes on to even say, for people who battle with addiction, that you feel like you're chained to something. And then, she led the prayer, and immediately I felt like a weight come off of me. And bro, I remember where I was sitting. I remember everything. Like, I was sitting in the middle row, like in the 8th row, right there in the middle. I had my wife next to me, and I think I had our boy Juan next to me as well. And I'm telling you, it once the 21 days were over, I said, okay, well, I don't need it. I don't need to anymore. And now at this point, we're 6+ years, not a sip, not anything.
Come on, bro. Amazing.
And
Congratulations.
Thank you. And mind you, I don't share that as a means of like, oh, alcohol is dangerous if it's dangerous to you.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, you got part of the thing I had to be real with is being real with myself, because I would say, it's only 1 or 2 drinks, but I've had a long day at work. Like, for me, it was like when you had to justify why you needed to do something, that's it. Cut it immediately. Mm-hmm. Because at that point, you're going to find any reason to do it.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So you are in North Carolina, dark as can be. You're doing alcohol, drugs, all that. You're wanting to end your life every single night. What was the one episode that you told me where you were like, you were scraping, I think, was it cocaine off the carpet?
Yeah.
And you're just like, I'm done. I want any kind of drugs I can. Want to experience the next high. I just don't want to feel what my day feels like, so I'll just numb myself. Yeah,
that day was rough. It was a bad day at work. Just the thoughts were terrible that day. That day, if I would have killed myself, that would have been it. My drug dealers at that point over there, they weren't answering the phone. One of them wasn't around. I had run low because I had already finished everything. And I'm like, I need something now. I was fiending for it. And so much so that I would see ashes in my carpet in my bedroom, and I would try to get something out of that. Yeah. For me, I consider it one of the most disgusting things I've ever done. And at that point, I'm like, that's it. I'm done. I'm done here. I'm over. And
I need some help.
At that point, I'm like, hey, God, if you're real, do something.
Is that the night you pick up the Bible?
Yeah. Or that pick up that book.
The book that your ex-girlfriend at the time had given to you, Amanda, who's your wife now, and you had it with you. Yeah.
For whatever reason. How it came to North Carolina, God knows. Like, seriously, yeah. So yeah, I scream out like, God, if you're real, like, do something. I'm a wreck. At that point, my roommates weren't there. They were out visiting family out of town, so I was alone even more. So immediately once I do that, I literally felt like someone picking me up, taking me to my bed, taking me to my nightstand. I open it up and I see this little book called Born to Triumph that Amanda had gotten me back in like 2013, back in like 2011, somewhere around there, at a church she visited. And she's like, hey, read this. Because I always dealt with sleep problems. And the opening verses to it is in the book of Psalms where it's like, the Lord will grant you sweet sleep.
Wow.
And yeah, man. So I just felt, I opened up my nightstand, I see it there, and then I start reading it. And I remember I had the best sleep I've ever had in my life.
Wow.
And I woke up the next day and it wasn't as bad. And then my roommates come back and they're like, hey, we got to take you to a church. And then that Sunday I go to a church and I give my life to Jesus.
You have been far from God, although you grew up in this Spanish Pentecostal church all these years, far from God.
Yeah.
And that day you go back to church.
Yeah.
Wow.
I go to Elevation Church.
What can you tell somebody listening to this right now? Like if they're dealing with depressing thoughts, suicidal thoughts, if they're sabotaging their own life the way you were.
Yeah.
Well, how can you help somebody right now? What's something you would like to tell them? If they're there, they're like, Adam, what you are describing, that's me right now.
Yeah. I mean, more than anything is get help, get help. Like, don't think you're a burden because you're not. Like the pain in our minds that we think like, oh, this person's busy. They have a lot going on. I don't want to have to bother them. That pain is less than the pain of you being gone. And, because there's no pain that in comparison to missing someone, knowing that you will never be able to see them again. And so there's that. And just you have to get help for yourself. You have to be okay with receiving help. You have to be okay with understanding you're not a problem to people. And also there's hope. There's hope. There's hope for tomorrow. You just have to, again, you have to be real with yourself. And if that's an area that you struggle with, okay, what can we do or what can be done so that we can move past this and grow from this, as opposed to just becoming defeated, being destroyed by our own means, by our own thoughts. And obviously there's levels to it, right? There's people there's a chemical imbalance that could be causing, depression. There's levels to it. So I also I'm not an expert.
Absolutely.
And I will never claim to be, but just sometimes one of the things is the moment that you can get your mind off of yourself and think about how, not so much of like, oh, I'm dealing with this, I'm alone, but more of like, okay, what can I do so I can get better? Or what can I do to enrich the lives of other people around me? I feel like that's also helped a lot.
That's very good. I think, thank God for your friends that although they weren't Christian, they were like, they at least had some wisdom in that moment to say, we need to get Adam in church. We need to get Adam out of the situation that he's in. So I think always go back to, don't do life alone. Yeah, for sure. So I love what you said, get some help as far as just talk to somebody. Yeah. And I think there's even moments where, and again, I've talked to people that they're in such a dark place, they can't get help even if they wanted to. Mm-hmm. So maybe you can't move out of that dark place, but somebody else can grab you and move you out of that dark place. But you just need to be around somebody, talk to somebody, something. Yeah. Maybe you can't get yourself to a therapist, somebody can. Maybe you can't get yourself to church, somebody else can. But just express some of these thoughts, express some of these feelings. Just maybe that night of you just saying, I don't want to live anymore. Snapchat, that was recording the Snapchat. Some people picked that up. Maybe some friends that made them think like, wait, Adam is not in the best place. Mm-hmm. At least just expressing something will get some people around, hopefully, to start making some moves. Your friends did. They got you to church. You went to Elevation Church. You go in there. Yeah. Pastor Stephen Furtick is preaching. And that day, you give your life to Jesus. Yeah. And even in that process, which, again, my thoughts just took over. They were about to. In that process of when he's making an altar call, I remember the message is called "The Hidden Cost of a High Calling." I listen to that message every so often just to, ground myself. So yeah, he's doing the altar call, and I remember during the moment they're about to say, "Hey, look, if you want to make this decision, you want Jesus in your heart, you want a fresh start, you want a new life, here's your chance to respond." I remember so vividly, like, thoughts already coming in my head is like, why are you even gonna bother? Why are you even like you shouldn't even be here? And then I remember them singing a song in their ministry that really has ministered to me and in that moment, and it's called Resurrecting, and it talks about in your name I come alive from the ashes of defeat. The resurrected King is resurrecting me, and immediately it's like my spirit man was activated, where it's like, okay, yeah, you know what? This old me, this old frame, this old mindset, this old way of living, he's dead. That Adam is dead, and now I'm gonna enjoy, and I'm gonna step into this new life that obviously the Jesus offers. Wow, what a beautiful story! Because I've known you the last maybe 7, 8 years that we've known each other.
Let me see. I started coming 2015. So
9 years.
Yeah. Wow. 9 years.
Time flies. And I've always known this other side of Adam, that every time that you share, especially your dark days in North Carolina, I find it so hard to believe because you are a go-getter. You are an incredible leader. And I think you're a testament of, number one, God's goodness, God's mercy. What Jesus can do in somebody's life is just absolutely wild. And I know, for example, every time the song Mercy comes on, we're all in tears. And I just look your way because I already know you're going to be sobbing. But God's goodness over our lives. And you always say it. You look at yourself, you're like, look at me. I'm married with kids, and you can't believe God has been that good to you. And as we start landing this plane, I love using this phrase on this podcast because I think it's absolutely true. I heard this many, many, many years ago. It's if you can change yourself, you can change your world. Yeah. And I say that all the time because I believe it's absolutely true. If you change yourself, you can change your world. A lot of us, we have aspirations of changing the world. I think that's good. That's absolutely an amazing ambition. I want to change the world, but I think you first should start with changing yourself. As you change yourself, you change your world. And that ultimately goes to help to change the world. I think you change your world. I think if you think of your world in North Carolina, it was a very dark world. Who knows how it was going to end? God stepped in and changed your world because you decided to change yourself. At that moment, you heard the call of God. You responded, although you had all these thoughts that came from the enemy, from your flesh. Why am I going to respond to this? Blah, blah, blah. It's crazy because all of us, I think the majority of us deal with intrusive thoughts. You still decided to respond to God's grace, God's call. And you change yourself, you change your world. What is your world like today? What could it have been like?
Yeah, I mean, what it could have been like, I could be dead. I could be in jail. I could have just been, if I would have still been alive, alone. But it's literally by God's mercy and His grace. And while you're even talking about that, I'm trying my best not to be emotional because we're on a podcast right now, and I don't want to be seen on the internet crying again, not again. But yeah, man, I am where I'm at today solely by the grace of God. That's why I am so fixated on the grace of God in a healthy way, meaning, God's grace, so I can do whatever I want. No, it's like, because I know and I'm aware of God's grace, the fact that I'm alive, the fact that I'm, that ex-girlfriend became my wife. I'm married to my best friend in the world, that she was graceful to me to even entertain taking me back after all the stuff I have done and said. The fact that now I get to enjoy 2 beautiful children, that I get to not only be a part of God's church, but to help be a part of leading it. It's like never in a million years would I've ever have dreamt or thought of this. And it's one of those things where it's like, man, it because of that, I need to make sure that I am disciplined. Because of that, I need to steward His grace well. Is how I look at it. And He blessed me with opportunity. Cool. I'm gonna steward that opportunity. I'm gonna do well. I'm gonna be responsible. He blessed me with my family. Okay, I'm gonna steward my family well. I'm gonna make sure I provide. I'm gonna make sure I'm present. And obviously, there's days that I wish I was way more graceful than I was. And some days I know that I messed up, but the beauty of God's grace is that it's new, and His mercy is new every morning, right? Yeah. So it's like I'm so fixated on how can I be better today than I was yesterday? Yeah. And yeah, so that's the reason why, more than anything, it's like I want to change myself so that the people around me can get better. Yeah. So that they can get the healthiest and best version of me. Yes. So that they can get better. And not a matter of I'm trying to demand anything from them, but because you can see that if I can elevate the standard of my life, which again, I'm not saying I'm this high and mighty person either. I fail time and time again, but because it's possible, that means it's possible for you.
100%. Pastor Craig Rochelle says that when a leader gets better, everybody else gets better. Yeah. And I think that's absolutely true. And I think, giving yourself, grace is good. But I think also having that a little bit of a high demand on yourself. There's nothing wrong with that either. And I know we carry ourselves like that. Everybody on our team, all of our brothers, everybody in our family, our whole staff, actually. I love that we are all always trying to get better.
Yeah.
Because as we all get better, everybody around us gets better. I appreciate you, brother. I love you very, very much. Every time I see you, I see a picture of God's grace and of God's goodness and what God can do with a life. And I promise you, I'm not kidding. Every time I see you, I see a walking miracle, and it reminds me of God's grace. So thank you for sharing your story. I think we need a part 2. This alone took already a little bit of time, but your story is beautiful. It's awesome. And I think your best days are still yet ahead. So
Amen.
Thank you for all that you do.
Thank
you for being in this journey together. And I love you. And I thank God. Always remember, if you change yourself, you can change your world.